landform you've studied, it's going to be waterfalls. So underneath your diagrams here, you can put in waterfalls. Okay? I'm going to help you out as much as I possibly can here, but you've done great infographics on these, okay? Really good infographics on these. Some of them I was looking at earlier on. They're brilliant. I can't wait to put them up around the classroom, okay? And even on Google Classroom. So, first step, we've got this vertical erosion, which is falling through this soft rock. You can see that the soft rock has been taken away over here already, where the river is falling, okay? Now we have to move on to our second diagram, which again I want you to be sketching, and you're going to see a bit of an overhang here that's starting to take shape. What do you think I'm talking about when I say overhang Ikemdi here? If you were to look at that little kind of gap there, what's an overhang of rock? Nice and loud. Well, what do you see is underneath that little overhang there? A massive gap, exactly. That's exactly what we're looking for here. And you're absolutely right. There's a gap. Okay? And this gap is created by what, do you think? Erosion from the falling water. Well, water and rain. Okay? Right, thank you. So, that's step 2. The vertical erosion starts to wear away at the rock behind the falling water. Okay? Just like you would see in one of your video games where you can go behind the waterfall. There's the gap behind the water, isn't there? Right? That's what the gap behind the water is. Right? I always reference Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild for that one when for anybody who plays it. Right. So what's eventually going to happen, and I'm going to do it in a slightly different way than I did before. I'm going to draw that. Let me fix that actually. That's that little kind of, those little lines there are representing where the rock has collapsed, where the rock has fallen away from, and here's the collapsing rock. Okay, it's moving down, it's collapsing, and again we have our hard rock here and our soft rock here. We can clearly say that this part of the overhang which is now collapsing because of the undercutting process that's happening underneath it, cutting of the rock underneath it from that falling water. It's collapsed because of that, okay? It's collapsed because it is soft rock, okay? But what we also see happening here, just to show you what will eventually happen by erasing it, is the formation of this little pool here. And what type of pool is it, Simsala? What's the name of this pool? A plunge pool, right? So, the plunge pool, from this collapsing rock, we actually have the plunge pool over here as well, but it's just widened over here. Will eventually be filled with little pebbles, stones, and maybe even some larger rocks from the falling, collapsing rock. Okay? They'll swirl around and they'll cause the process of abrasion to happen. Okay? And then finally, I'm going to try and draw it very small here because I want to make the gorge kind of stand out. Right? What is a gorge? A gorge is basically the fact that the waterfall is constantly creating this repeated cycle of collapsing rock. If the rock continues to collapse over time, that rock is all going to be completely gone eventually. It's going to be eroded, it's going to eventually go and be dissolved and follow the course of the river down to the sea. Okay? So we've lost all of this rock here. The river has retreated. It's now falling here instead of falling over here. Okay? That is called a steep-sided gorge. What's difficult to see in these diagrams is the things that are going to be on either side of that gorge. What is on either side of that gorge? A very steep-sided valley. Okay, with very high rock. Okay, but in the middle of the two sides of rock that are very steep, that you wouldn't be able to walk up, is the waterfall. Right in the middle of it, okay? So a gorge is where the river retreats upstream, back towards its source, where it started. Okay, there's not really a plunge pool anymore. The whole thing is kind of leveled out, and the process will repeat itself, and it will keep moving back. There is a bit of a plunge pool, actually. I shouldn't say there's not. Okay, so those are the 4 steps. Now we need to write our answer, and we're going to try and do it very quickly, and I'm going to get you to kind of help me out with this. So what's the first thing that happens? River flows over what type of rock first? flows over hard rock, and then over, and you can fill in the arrow, and then over soft rock. Okay, as it moves over this soft rock, what type of erosion is taking place? Vertical erosion. So vertical erosion breaks through the soft rock. Is this something that is happening immediately, or is it happening over time? Yeah, it's happening over time. Okay, right. So that's step one. That's the first kind of mark that we're going to pick up here, right? Second thing that happens then, and again referring to the diagrams that we've drawn to help us out, and maybe if we forget to mention the plunge pool, we've labelled it in our diagram. So eventually that vertical erosion is going to create vertical erosion creates a plunge pool. Which is a pool of what type of rocks? I mentioned the word earlier on where they move around. Yeah, well, they are pebbles, but what are they doing? They're swirling around, okay? Swirling rocks, okay? Which cause what process to happen? Abrasion. Sorry, I forgot to mention earlier on, this process here, another word for the river's vertical erosion, the force of the water, would be hydraulic action. Well done. So you know this. Okay, so they cause abrasion, which undercuts the rock behind the fall. Yeah.
So instead of saying vertical erosion, can you say hydraulic action?
Absolutely. Hydraulic action breaks through the soft rock. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so that's the second mark. Third mark, and I'm going to try and keep the diagrams in, trying to write a little bit smaller here. Plunge pool has already been created. The overhang, eventually what's going to happen to it, Fola? That wall at the back is going to keep getting pushed back. And eventually what's going to happen to that overhang? It's going to drop. And another word for it's going to drop would be it's going to collapse, right? So later, the overhang above will collapse. Now, what type of rock... Sorry, I said earlier on that it's that the overhang is soft rock, but actually it can be hard rock. Sometimes that overhang will be... Well, most of the time, actually, that overhang is going to be hard rock. You think about it, it's been left there for so long, the only reason it's going to collapse is because the rock underneath it is being eroded away. So, the overhang above will collapse. Don't need to write about it being hard rock, but the overhang above will collapse due to this undercutting. Okay. This will, you could add in here that this will leave more rocks in the pool. Okay, and then finally, the last sentence here, what's going to be formed over time as the cycle repeats itself? So the cycle will repeat, creating a steep-sided gorge and what you could add in there, which I don't have room for, but you could add in here that it's due to this will lead to the river constantly retreating upstream, retreating towards its source, whichever one of those two things that you would like to say. Yes, okay. So that's the answer. Well done. Now I need